This episode is brought to you by Fusion 5. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to hear from Jayden Liddelow, security consultant at Fusion 5, about how organisations can mature their security posture from reactive vulnerability management towards proactive assurance. Hello and welcome to the iTnews podcast. I'm your host, Eleanor Dickinson. Our first guest this fortnight is Melbourne Airport's Head of Cybersecurity, Cheuk Wong. Melbourne Airport is building up its cyber detection and response capabilities in order to secure 30 million annual passenger journeys, which are enabled by multiple technology systems. Wong has helped shape a cybersecurity roadmap around understanding the airport's IT environment, its constantly changing risks, and proactive detection and response. So Cheuk, you have led Melbourne Airport's cybersecurity strategy now for over 6 years. Can you tell me at a high level about how your strategy has evolved over these years and what are its key pillars now?
Let me give you a quick history about my journey here. 6 years ago, I started here. It was me, myself, and I. Cyber was here, but wasn't really a main focus for the company. And when I came here, we took cyber a little bit more seriously, looked at it more broadly from a business risk perspective. And over these last 6 years, I'm proud to say that we've built a small and lean team, but a very effective team of cybersecurity professionals and governance professionals to help drive cybersecurity and governance across the airport. Our strategy has obviously evolved over time. When I first came here, there wasn't really a strategy. Even over the past year, our strategy, our roadmap has changed, has adapted over time as well, based on emerging risks, based on things changing within the environment, and what are the high-risk items within the airport itself. We tend to pivot from our program where necessary to fix or address vulnerabilities, risks that come up quite frequently that are not actually in our program today.
Can you tell me what some of these vulnerabilities you're seeing more of now, and how are you taking more of a proactive way of setting yourself up against these?
Yes, it was more reactive in the past because we didn't understand our environment very well. We didn't understand what people were doing in the environments, and we didn't understand who had access to our environment. So if you don't understand what's going on in the environment, how are you able to actually effectively protect it? So what we focused on is trying to understand our environment better. So then having that visibility allows us to then question what's going on and then asking questions around, is this appropriate, is this not appropriate, do we want to change how things work, etc. And then being able to not just respond reactively when something happens, but being able to predict in the future in terms of, okay, these people have these level of access into our environment. What are the things that could actually go wrong? So how do we then prevent these things moving forward?
We all know that airports are some of the most vulnerable institutions in the entire world. We know that because every single time we fly, we go through the scanners, we go through the metal detectors, but we don't often think about it from a cyber security perspective. So you don't have to go into too many specifics, but can you perhaps outline some of the main threats you have been having to deal with lately?
You bring up a good point. So I'm responsible for the cyber security of the airport, but there's also a big team responsible for the aviation and the physical side of the airport. You see the physical controls in terms of the body scanners, the bag scanners, the check-ins, etc. You go through Border Force and they do checks as well to ensure that there's a number of physical security controls. From a cyber perspective, I support most of those systems from a back-end perspective. For example, we have a pretty large precinct. We have 4 terminals and we have a whole bunch of supporting infrastructure. We have an access control system that manages physical access across the entire precinct and all the terminals. If that access control system were to go down, then we can't control access to critical areas of the airport. So from my perspective, I help understand what the business requirements are from a system perspective and help build security controls to ensure that people don't compromise those systems, ensure that those systems are available, as well as making sure the integrity of those systems are maintained. So you don't want people breaching the system, changing access, or people giving access to different areas that may be sensitive to the airport. Baggage handling is probably a really big system for us because if the baggage handling system is down, we can't move bags. We can't move bags, we can't move passengers. And passengers don't stop coming to the airport. And you imagine that if you come to the airport, you can't check in or you can't get your bags from the check-in counter to the airplane, that delays the flight. And if that delays the flight on our end, it will delay the flight arriving at the other end. A flight delay at our side will affect the other airports as well. And we move approximately 100,000 passengers a day through the airport. If you use an analogy, that's probably equivalent to what MCG. MCG holds 100,000 at every event. So think about we having the MCG filled every day at the airport.
Yeah, and it's quite a lot of stakeholders, I would imagine, as well, because there is Melbourne Airport, but there's also multiple airlines, and also the retailers who are also based at the airport, and of course Australian Border Force. So how do you manage all those stakeholders and ensure there is that kind of seamless working together, both from a system perspective and from a people perspective?
There are some systems that are not managed by us. The Border Force, the air controls, they're all government run and regulated. I'm responsible for the stuff on the ground that facilitates the airport facilities themselves and the airport systems. There are a lot of third parties, and they form part of our ecosystem. And there are some things that when a third party system may not be available, it does also impact the airport indirectly. All we can do in those areas is make sure we're part of the incident response process to help provide guidance, to help provide information, to work through our internal processes to help them restore their systems as quickly as possible. Where it's systems that are directly managed by the airport, we have different response mechanisms, both from a technology and from a business perspective. We have BCP plans, etc. We have manual processes, but we all work as a group to kind of get the operation up and running as quickly as possible.
You mentioned earlier that you yourself have a small team that you've grown over the years. I'd love to hear how you go about managing an operation that has, I think you said 100,000 people going through every day with such a small team and making sure it's online 24/7.
We have a small cyber team, but we have a broader technology operations team that obviously helps and are responsible for the operation of the majority of the systems. Myself is responsible for the cyber side, and yes, there's many components and many interactions between the operations team. So I do my part to help move passengers along in the journey. I'm just a cog in the wheel of that from my perspective.
Can I just clarify, do you outsource to an external security operations center?
We are a lean team, so we do rely on third parties. So we have a managed security service provider that helps us with our 24/7 monitoring, detection, response capabilities. We obviously do a lot of logging within our environment to make sure that we have visibility. Visibility is very important to me because if I don't know what's happening in the environment, I can't protect it. So the more visibility I have, the better. That information is fed to our third party who helps, again, looks at potentially suspicious activity and alert us if there's anything that we need to be worried about, and then help us in the response process. We also have third parties with our security awareness program and other third parties in the security space to help us with security testing. Security testing is a key thing for me because at the end of the day, you can implement as many controls as you want, but to test the effectiveness of those controls, you need to test. And security testing is a big part of my strategy, my approach to making sure that we maintain a level of appropriate or adequate security for the airport.
What do you look for when you are looking on bringing on either a new capability? What factors do you look for to bring on that new solution?
So we continue to look at new tooling. But it's not just about tooling, it's about the process, about the people, and it's about managing risk for the airport. So what are the key risks from an airport and from a business perspective? We align our program to what the business worries about most, and then cyber is one of those things that are high up on the list that they worry about. We have constant interaction with senior management in that risk space to ensure that our program and our controls help them manage the airport's risk to an appropriate level. And it's a continuous journey with that, and it will continue to change and continue to grow, and it's not getting any easier.
In the past, Cheuk, you've talked about the importance of network security at Melbourne Airport, and as we mentioned, you could have as many as 100,000 people connecting to your Wi-Fi every day. While that might not be the first thing that people think of when it comes to airport security, I imagine that's a very important one, both from protecting yourselves internally, but also the passengers who are logging into these Wi-Fi systems.
So from a free Wi-Fi perspective, everybody loves free Wi-Fi, especially travelers coming in internationally where they don't have the internet access on their phone. We provide as a service for all the passengers, and the way that we protect that and protect the airport is that we put that on a completely separate network, so it has no connectivity back to the corporate network, so that's somebody can try to attack. We do security testing on a continuous basis to test the effectiveness of our controls to make sure that there is that separation.
I feel like it wouldn't be a tech podcast if I didn't mention AI. I would love to hear from you how you see it playing into the threat landscape and cyber defense, and for you, whether you see it as a help or a hindrance.
It's both, because the bad guys are using it, and the bad guys will probably accelerate their use of AI. And we're seeing it today. They're helping to write malware, they're helping to write exploits, they're helping to write better phishing emails. And we have to use AI as well to help with some of the monitoring detection, because there's just so much data. You can't rely on people combing through the data, because it is like a needle in a haystack. We need to use AI within our environment to help in the monitoring, detection, and response, because there is so much data within the environment. There will be more and more data as things get more digitized and more complex. For us, it's like finding a needle in a haystack, and the haystack is getting bigger and bigger. Trying to find that needle is going to be more difficult. And a lot of toolings that we use today is actually incorporating AI into their analytic capabilities, their detection capability, and their response capabilities. We use an email security tool that uses AI. It not only looks at the individual emails, but looks at the broader ecosystem across all the email mailboxes within Melbourne Airport, and then tries to put some logic behind detecting a conversation as a whole, from the point that who sent the message, what the context of the subject of the message is, how many people it's gone to, what is the subject matter, have we seen these type of emails come in their environment, is the language similar to previous messages. An individual can't do it. We need to leverage AI to help us with that, with understanding those nuances and being able to build better detection and response capabilities.
What would you say is the most impactful thing you have done or achieved in the last 12 months? And how is that playing out into your strategy looking forward?
That's a difficult one, because we've done so much. I guess if I had to pick one, identity and access management would be a key one for us. We've built automation that when our HR system says that this individual will be leaving the business at the end of the month, that account is terminated. So cutting off access immediately. So removing the risk of any access left over after the individual leaves helps us manage our risk. That's a key win for us, and we plan to grow that system and then build more from a security perspective, but also from an efficiency perspective.
Looking ahead, Melbourne Airport is going through some pretty enormous expansion at the moment. You have the expansion of Terminal 2 and the building of the Melbourne Airport Railway. So I imagine that your job workload isn't decreasing anytime soon.
No, it's not. I don't think it will ever go away, and it will always be increasing. Like you mentioned, the rail, so that's the big project. We also have the third runway coming in as well. So third runway is supposed to be built by, I think, 2031, they're estimating that. And right now we put through, 30 million plus passengers. I think the last year we've put through 35 million passengers through the airport, but by then, we'll have new terminals or renovation expander terminals. We'll have a new runway. We'll have the rail system. We'll have all the support infrastructure in the back end that you don't see. If we're building a new runway and we're expanding the terminal itself, we need new baggage handling system. We need all the back end systems to support the flow of passengers. So the work is not going away. It'll be very interesting years to come.
You've held a number of cybersecurity roles over 2 decades now, both in Asia and Australia. For any of our listeners looking to get into cybersecurity, what would some of your key advice be?
Don't be afraid to learn. You're always going to learn. You're going to consistently learn, and you need to consistently learn actually in cybersecurity, because things change so fast. And also, don't be afraid to fail, because only through failure you're going to be able to actually succeed. And don't try to be perfect all the time. I live by the 80-20 rule. I used to be a perfectionist, try to do everything perfectly, do analysis after analysis to try to get it right. But it's too slow. We have to be agile. So 80-20 rule, just get 80% of what you want to do quickly, because the 80% is probably the easiest things to do, and then work through the last 20% at a slower pace. Don't forget about them, but make sure you will work through them at a slower pace at a later date when you already have some controls in place. Because the 80% of the control is better than having no control.
As long as you make sure you're perfect when it comes to making sure nothing gets through.
It's a cat and mouse game, right? You may think you're ahead one day, but certainly I would say you're not. It's back and forth. AI is going to make it more difficult. It's not a matter of if, it's more a matter of when. And when happens is how do you respond to it, how quickly respond to it. Because something's eventually going to get through. If you think that you're going to be 100% perfect, you're going to be able to stop everything, you're probably not living in the real world from my perspective. There is no such thing as 100% security. There's only you do what you can, you do the best you can, and you do it as quickly as you can. When you find things, you try to fix it as quickly as you can. But things will happen, and it's about responding effectively, communicating, and making sure senior management knows what you're doing.
That's actually very sound advice, I would imagine, to some of the cybersecurity professionals we've spoken to out there in the past who are at the point of burning themselves out because of the pressure of the roles.
We all have those days and those moments where we're going, oh my God, we're overwhelmed. And I have many of those days as well. It's just you take it on the chin, you take a step back, you take a deep breath, and then you move on. You will be stressed, but all I can say is that do the best you can. You rely on your team, you trust your team, you have to trust your team, and you have to trust individuals that are smarter than you, that you can't know everything, you don't know everything. So when you're out there, you have to find bright people that are skilled and you have to rely on them and help them help you and help the business.
I think that's a really good point to end on. So thank you so much for talking to us today, Cheuk.
Thank you.
As organisations work towards a more mature security posture, their thinking needs to shift from reactive vulnerability management towards proactive assurance. Jayden Liddelow, security consultant with IT solutions provider Fusion 5, joins us to discuss the strategic steps organisations should take on this journey.
The first step for organizations is to regularly evaluate their security posture. This allows you to identify potential vulnerabilities and threats using risk assessments. It really is about visibility, and it's the critical first step to being proactive, and it helps in understanding the unique risks organizations face. That allows them to prioritize mitigation efforts so that the attention can be placed on the most impactful risks. And that then allows you to take that proactive action using tested policy and procedure to particularly focus on vulnerability management, on taking initiative with driving proactive improvements across endpoint security, data security, and identity security. Now, keeping up to date with security trends and threats targeted at your organization allows you to be proactive and targeted in your efforts. And it also is critical to then foster a culture of security awareness to empower your employees to monitor for vulnerabilities.
So, how do they maintain continuous visibility into their vulnerabilities?
Yeah, that requires robust tooling to gain insights at a quick glance of the most impactful risks to an organization. The key recommendation is to implement automated vulnerability scanning tools that continuously monitor your systems, networks, and applications for vulnerabilities and aligns them with known frameworks. It's really important to include monitoring and alerting to ensure prompt responses for your security teams to those emerging threats in real time. And that end-to-end coverage reduces the chance of gaps in your posture that the threat actors will likely use to abuse. The other key to this is automation and ensuring as few mistakes as possible can occur through human error or any mismanaged process. Automating the remediation of software and operating system vulnerabilities with tooling not only saves you money, but it allows your talented teams to do what they do best and make those improvements to your security posture and drive your business further.
So, how is modern identity management essential to achieving robust security and reducing cyber exposure?
Well, some of the most common threats for any size of business is those focused on identity and manipulating employees into divulging credentials or sensitive information. And these days, it's a question of if, not when, a cyber attack targets us, meaning essential protections like MFA and risk-based adaptive authentication are critical to a solid identity management posture. But it goes beyond that. It goes to managing the life cycle of employees, which allows us to ensure accurate access for employees to do their jobs and is providing us with the least possible risk for overprivileged accounts. It means that we technically have really strong controls, but from a strategy point of view, we can reduce the overall risk and exposure the business has to these identity-based threats when they occur. This then saves us potentially hundreds of thousands in recovery efforts in the event of a disaster and allows us as leaders of the organization to rest comfortably.
So, when building a cybersecurity strategy, what's your approach to aligning diverse stakeholders to collectively minimize exposure?
It's really important to get everyone onto the same page. And it's a real challenge that organizations face in the current landscape. But using straightforward language and building a plan from the beginning is really important to ensure that you get buy-in from each of the stakeholders. Everyone has their own vested interests, and it's really important that each of those are addressed so that buy-in from these stakeholders is consistent and regular throughout the entire process. Maturing a strategy is really difficult, but ensuring that we have regular cadences and a really strong plan is really important to get these stakeholders involved.
When you're dealing with a diverse group of stakeholders, which areas in particular do you find often need that extra push to be aligned?
Yeah, there's a real struggle generally between those executives who are strong in their business knowledge and the direction they want to take cybersecurity, and those that are technically minded. So bridging the gap between the two areas of the business is a real challenge that we face. And that's really where services come in to reduce the technical language and understand that technical people may have different priorities, and ensuring that they feel that they're brought into the conversations from a strategy point of view and an overall point of view means that they are able to bring their responses to the table, feel that they are heard, and then be able to feel that their problems and their pain points are actually addressed by those at an exec level, where the exec may not actually have the full picture of the technical controls. And the cybersecurity strategy really needs both that direction and that understanding of a technical gap analysis.
You've been listening to Jayden Liddelow, security consultant with IT solutions provider Fusion 5, sharing how organisations can mature their security posture from reactive vulnerability management towards proactive assurance. For more information on how you can level up your cybersecurity protection, download Fusion 5's Cyber Threats Guide today.
That's the episode for this fortnight. Stay tuned for the next episode, and for all the latest headlines and happenings in Australian technology news, head over to itnews.com.au.